Coming up in today's show.
Here was a man who was tortured to death virtually by the British. And the rich will say they want a new world order. We want to tell them we want a new world order. He deserves a special place in history in the capital city. And I think in Mayo we should be making a move on that. Mass media preston is going to last. It could disappear as quickly as it appeared. Civilizations have come and gone before our time. Roman, Persian, Egyptian. These things rise and fall.
And I says, I'm going to make sure of one thing. I'm going to make sure that the people of this country remember.
Not all superheroes wear capes. Some wear wellies. Wellies.
Hello everyone and welcome to a very special edition of the James Conway Experience. We've had a wonderful day here today in Dromore West County Sligo, planting potatoes and cabbage and learning different skills. And we have a bit of a hero of mine here today, and he planted an oak tree for us and we showed him a little bit of artwork. The immense Mr. Tom Moran, you're very welcome.
Thank you.
So Tom,
it's a great pleasure to be here.
Well, we're very happy to have you here. Tom, I'm familiar with you. There might be people out there who are not familiar with you. Will you please tell us where you were born and where you grew up and how you came to be the front man for trying to take Ireland back in a proper way, as the man says?
Well, I couldn't claim too much responsibility for a lot of things. These things happen on the road of life. I was born in Westport, and I suppose I was politically aware for a long time of this country, and it seemed to me it was never going right. And the battle between the two Civil War parties went on forever. And each time we hoped maybe somebody might do the right thing and pay attention to the people. But that didn't happen over my lifetime. But we talked about heroes and past history, but we had no models in terms, except perhaps, if I look back on it, Dr. Noel Brown. Here was a man who stood out among men, a man of the people, who in his time took on the task of eradicating tuberculosis in our country, which was very rampant in the 1950s, just after the war. About the same time as we adopted the British system, the National Health Service, NHS, which we now want to dump in favour of a HSE. Anyway, that's rambling a bit. But Dr. Noel Brown, we do owe him a huge debt of gratitude for the health benefits he brought to our country. And the cowardice of Dáil Éireann at that time. Both the clergy and his comrade all betrayed Dr. Noel Brown. And it's to eternally my great regret to see how shabbily this man was treated. A man who gave so much and got so little. Anyway, I went to school, to the Christian Brothers School. I read most of the history, but curiously, I don't recall doing anything in particular on Mayo history and Michael Davitt. And I think that's a great lamentation on my part, the fact that we didn't do Davitt. Because Davitt was most consequential, not just for Mayo, but for the whole country. I mean, here was a man who was tortured to death virtually by the British because he was a Fenian and he took up arms and he was a nationalist and the right frame of mind, a man with spirit, and they tried to kill it off. And they all about nearly did that in Dartmoor when they reduced them to a skeleton nearly. The man that came back to Mayo barely alive to rouse the people, to get people to realise that they had the power to change things. And what he actually achieved in that time is the most extraordinary part of our history. And to think that we weren't even taught about us in Mayo in my school days.
Well, David, with the Land League you're referring to, we all owe a massive debt of gratitude to those men, because it was those men who assured that we could live in our country and grow in our country. Why do you think, Tom, that there's so little highlighting done to young people about some of those, what I'd refer to as Irish heroes now? They really, in the last couple of years, seem to have neglected teaching the youth about those men of old who we owe such a debt of gratitude to.
They are seriously neglected. They're more happy to talk about Charles Stewart Parnell as being the architect. Charles Stewart Parnell was around about the time of David, but the driving force was Michael David, no question about that. And he was the man who brought people to Crossroads, spoke to them, had huge gatherings. They obviously terrified the British government, because the British government were forced to parley, as they say, to sit down and talk about this, because David got the upper hand because he had the power of the people. This supreme power. When people are united, nothing can stop it. Police, army, government. Only God Almighty can stop a united people from achieving what they want. And that unity is what we hope in our time, before I depart this world. It's togetherness and standing together and forgetting about small petty differences in politics. For the good of the people, take on what's there and throw them out, physically throw them out. Because these people have no special powers. They're probably the most incompetent bunch of people on this frickin' island at the moment. And they are imposters in the job they propose to do, because they're not capable. They don't even know their brief in most cases. And their business is to keep us down and look after the rich. And the rich will say they want a new world order. We want to tell them, we want a new world order. The new world order we want is we take the upper hand. We are the producers of the wealth. We are the ones that should share the wealth, not for you, like leeches, to feed off our backs and to drive us off the country, drive us out of our country, to take what we have earned. We are telling them now, our time has come. We have come to take our birthright. The resources of this island belong to us. And you can take what we leave you, but you will not dominate us anymore. That's where we want to be.
How you, in your lifetime, Tom, you have seen what were state resources sold off one by one. We're in a position now where there's very little left that they have not sold. How did you feel at the time to have witnessed all of this through the years, as the oil and the gas and, you know, as everything one by one was given away?
Oh, I felt cheated, to be honest. And the last one I recall is Aircom, where Mary O'Rourke was telling us all to buy shares. We were all going to be very rich by buying shares. The whole thing was an absolute con. I can remember we had an Irish sugar company. We had our rural Garda stations. We had our rural post offices. We had Cólach Shukra Éireann, the Irish sugar company in Tuam and Carlow, providing huge employment for our farmers. The final kick in the teeth for me was to see Pascal O'Donoghue offering Aer Lingus, the national airline, to IAG as a present. A thing that the Irish people had actually paid for and built up. We were too slow to say, stop, that belongs to us. Every citizen of this state has a share in that, and they must get paid out accordingly. The debt has been going on for so long. So for the future, we need to say, don't tell us about privatization. We own it. we're not selling. It belongs to us. And we all are shareholders. That's the only way it's going to work.
How would you describe your political motivation or position? Would you describe it as a socialist, or how would you describe it, Tom?
I would say socialist because of David.
Yes.
Because I believe that all resources should be shared. No one should absolutely own. Besides, if you look at life, all we ever have is the loan of something while we're here. We can't take it with us. But there are those concerned about material wealth. Where are they now? They have all the wealth in the world. But what have they really gained? The ordinary person is entitled to a living. And any system of government that we have in Ireland, I would hope, would be a socialist government, because the essential part would be like a cooperative, that everyone has a share and has a stake in it. All I ever hear when they're talking about things like fisheries, the stakeholders. When they're talking about stakeholders, they're talking about the hoteliers or the so-called entrepreneurs, not the small housewife or working class man who has a share anyway and should have. The stakeholders. Everyone is a stakeholder and should be.
What has happened, in your view, with Sinn Féin in the modern era? Because you have spent a lifetime observing politics. There would be a lot of people who would have viewed Sinn Féin as the alternative, and perhaps a socialist alternative to the mainstream parties, we'll say. Now they seem to be more engaged in identity politics and affairs outside of the country than the core messages of what people fought for back in the 20s and beforehand. What do you think has happened?
Well, if you look at the evolution of our country, it evolved from Sinn Féin.
Mm-hmm.
The first government elected came from the Sinn Féin, if you like, membership. And I'd always seen Sinn Féin as a national socialist party. And that, to some extent, stayed with me for a long time. But when it came down to voting on an issue like free speech or the hate speech bill, that's when Sinn Féin and I parted company. Because if we don't have free speech, we have no freedom. You have no democracy. The right of free speech is a fundamental right. It's like water. We need it to survive, to operate our political affairs. Free speech, which is what I'm saying today now here. Wherever we can speak out, all of us, and get the message out there that we do not want this government. This government doesn't have a mandate. They never came to ask us if we agreed with them shutting down their policy on building houses, which they've done, or any other thing that they brought about by bringing in hundreds of thousands of foreigners, deadwood, to destroy our economy. They didn't get a mandate from us. So use that thing which we have, the free speech. Speak out. And don't be afraid if they don't like what they hear. Speak your mind, because if we don't speak it, we will forever regret we didn't.
Oh man, Tom. Tom, we're very, very happy to have yourself here today, and plenty of people who've been helping us out on the farm and that. And unfortunately, the cowshed wasn't big enough to fit everyone that was here today. But what we might do is go to the floor and take a few questions from the floor, if that's all right.
You'll just have to shout them now. I don't have a roving mic.
Speak up. Is there anyone there have any questions that they'd like to hear from Tom?
Can you tell us a bit more about Michael David and his tactics?
Well, David got the people out on the crossroads, like we have done, like going on marches to Dublin and public protests. But that wasn't quite working. And David said, well, this is fine. And he knew he had the support of the people, because the people had nothing. So David himself was thrown out on the roadside in Straight at the age of 4. And thank God for a good English family in Haslington, even though he lost an arm, he was well educated and he was able to speak and write. And no doubt we in Mayo should be forever grateful to this man. And the one regret I often think about David was in O'Connell Street, where all the great leaders of Ireland are represented. There is no statue to David. Why? Because he was socialist? Probably. Because he had no place in a capitalist city like Dublin, which probably in its day was a unionist city more than even Belfast. But he deserves a special place in history in the capital city. And I think in Mayo we should be making a move on that, to press for a proper statue to David with the slogan, "The land for the people." That was his motto.
Do you think half of we'll say the way they don't promote him is based on the fact that this man was drawing crowds of thousands of people in rural areas of Ireland? And if one now looks back at the time, we're actually heading to a time now where, once again, an awful lot of the people have very little, because a lot of people are stuck in the position where they're renting or their mortgages, and they're not shareholders in much at all. If they stand back to look at, if they lose their job, they will find out very quickly what they own, which is very little. And do you think that the way they don't promote David is because he was telling the people, you own it all. This is our country. You own an asset of all of the resources of this country. Is that what frightens them, do you think?
I think it does. That we have the audacity to remind them that we do own the vast part of the lands of this island. They are nothing without us. I mean, what he employed most of the time there was boycott. He practically starved people out with the boycott. He had the perfect instrument without firing a shot. He used the boycott against them.
In the modern age, is that something that can come again? Because I speak to a lot of people and I say, there is a group of people in this country who stood up for themselves and stood up against the government or that, but as a group they need to come together and trade amongst themselves, you know? Because what we need to be doing is promoting our own tradespeople, promoting our own artists, promoting our own farmers from within that subsection of society who stood up to things. It cannot be replicated in the modern age, the tactics that David used.
James, I think you could be wrong in saying that. I think this is particularly why it will work, because we don't have RTE, the propaganda media, but he didn't have anything at all. And the media, well, I suppose, was by the ruling classes in the towns, but he managed to get those people out at the crossroads. And in doing that alone, he took over the balance of power, people power. He proved for all time that the power of the people is supreme. It dominates everything else. And David was able to manipulate that to get back what he desired for his own people. The right to their land, the right to live in their own country, the right to have a decent living. That was David, no question about it. As I say, we should honour him at every opportunity.
Does it frustrate you that here we are on an island that's immensely fertile, oceans filled with fish, gas, oil, wind, and 5 million people are willing to be dictated to by a couple hundred?
It's absolutely absurd when you look at it, because these people haven't the power. We give them the power. We do it psychologically, but we are the power if we believed in ourselves enough and stood up against them. That's where the strength is, standing up.
What has changed in the Irish psyche, do you believe, in your lifetime, that people are so unrebellious at the moment? Because I have my theory on it, which is a lot of people now live a life of relative comfort. Most people have to admit, you have central heating, plumbing, electric, a lot of things that were not common in David's time. Has that softened people in your regard?
It has, but no more Ireland than anywhere else. But it has made people soft. As we were out there today, coming in contact with the soil and looking at the source of all life itself, the soil, we're brought face to face with reality. And when an atomic bomb falls, God forbid, we're back there. We have to start from scratch again. We must never lose that connection with the soil and the earth. And our whole purpose on earth, even, in the more basic terms. But to be able to fall back and to be able to adapt, to live on relatively very little, we need to start learning how, because that may face us in the future. There is no guarantee that this electronically controlled mass media system is going to last. It could disappear as quickly as it appeared. Civilizations have come and gone before our time. Roman, Persian, Egyptian. These things rise and fall. That the fact that we don't forget basic skills is very important. That I believe we must always keep.
Yeah, no, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Can you tell me a little bit about the Westport that you remember in your youth and the changes that you've seen? And what are the major changes that you have seen and kind of the lifestyle of Ireland, we'll say?
Well, Westport was very much together society generally. But over time it changed in ways that made people more selfish, I think. People grew apart rather than coming together. As I say, I grew up a good while too out the countryside in a place near Rahagower. And I was just recalling it there today. You'd be walking the road, maybe I'd be 8 or 10 years of age. But if somebody had a car, they'd stop and offer a lift. Or if they had a pony and trap at the time was the favourite thing for going to Mass on a Sunday. Well, if they had space, people invited you. There was a certain community feeling there, always. And that gradually after the war disappeared. And people became more self-centred. And I think we need to go back there because it's a much more wholesome way of life. And I found that abroad in certain places as well, that the farming people had more heart in them than the townspeople, the ones that had gone up the ladder of development. They had less empathy in them than the people from the land. There was a goodwill, a feeling of goodwill there. And they would share what they had. And that was their way of life. And it was delightful, really.
Tell me a little bit about crime. There was very little crime in those days. And you were dealing with a society that most people had very, very little. Which, you know, to me, it's a little bit of a strange one. You had a lot of people who had very, very little, and there was less crime. Now you could argue you have a majority of people who were far more better off than those people were in that time, and crime is very, very prevalent. What do you think is the cause of that?
Well, James, you know, looking on that particularly, one thing that strikes me most of all is the great injustice that was done to certain families in this country, of the poorer families, who did misdemeanours, who might have stolen a packet of cigarettes or something ridiculous. And they ended up institutionalised in places like Letterfrack and places like that. I think there was a great injustice done by our society to those people. And like, I regret it in as much that I wasn't in a position to do much about it, but I should in some way, I feel, have done something. Because those people, they were the nicest of people, and on misdemeanours, they were institutionalised and treated like lepers almost. They were horrible treatment to those young men that were detained under Christian Brothers in places like Letterfrack, and it's so regrettable.
Well, that's an interesting point, because another gentleman made the same point to me. he says we bred criminality through institutions.
But
I
did
think
we
we
allow
did.
that to happen? You know, like how we're...
Well, as a society, we did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
We
like,
did allow
I mean,
it
they
to
were
happen.
quiet back then, they're quiet now, you know. There's similarities, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These people were very much wronged anyway.
On the subject of religion, Tom, you have a lifetime to look back at it now. I would describe Ireland now would not be as religious a place as it formerly was. Religious belief is not as common. Is it a good thing or a bad thing in your view?
It's a bad thing because I think we've gone too far in church bashing. We forgot one thing. The church is ours, not the clerics. The church is the church of Jesus Christ, and we are the members of that church. The officers of that church have behaved absolutely unforgivably. But it has always been a sort of tenet of our survival in this island that we associated Christianity with our struggle against tyranny from outside. And it has given us strength when things were bad. Religion teaches us things like faith, hope, and charity. And if we take our faith honestly and sincerely, it's a great power in itself, and it's a great way of life. And it teaches one very important thing, that the dignity of man, that all men are equal in the sight of God. It's a very sobering thought that we don't discriminate. We treat people, fairly and honestly on a personal basis. And we don't blacken any particular group. I know at the present time we're at the pin of our collar trying to deal with this Trojan horse that has been dumped on our doorstep. This deliberate flooding of the market with so much labour that, well, if the people that arrived were workers, they wouldn't be too bad. But we're going to see a very serious decline in our economy, because it cannot be supported by production. There's too many dependents. The welfare bill is so enormous. This thing is going to fall on its face. Now, Micheál Martin and his minions in the Department of Finance haven't faced it yet. Or are they going to borrow more money from the European Central Bank and put us in more debt while they continue this mad game of economics that's not working?
Do you feel that we're kind of on the cusp of universal basic income?
That's what they want to bring in. But we better not fall into that trap, because we don't want to be dependent. Most important, we want to remain independent, be able to support ourselves and not to be dealt with by being given a check electronically and told what we can have and what we cannot have.
And you can only spend it in a certain time frame and not hoard it and all that kind of stuff, you know?
Absolutely. There is a danger of this electronic control that they're building.
Yeah.
But again, there are subtle ways of getting rid of that too, which we won't go into here. The mightiest toy that they have can be brought to nothing, very simply.
You, in your lifetime, will have seen 3 currency changes. I think that you're probably on the brink of seeing the 4th one, Tom. In your opinion, what is the state of currency? Because there's an awful lot of people who think that if they just put the few pound under the mattress and continue living, that it's going to work out for them. But that's not the case. You would have seen massive periods of the decline of value of money in your lifetime. Can you tell us a little bit about it? Maybe a little bit about the original currency, because a lot of young people probably aren't aware that there was currencies before the euro. Do you know?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't be all that familiar with most, but the one that would strike me is the change from the punt to the euro, which makes you think about currency and what it is. And I mean, money is only a promise. It's a mythical thing. It doesn't exist really. It's only a piece of paper. And it's an act of faith that you accept a €50 note as having value. It is only its basic value piece of paper. It's based on credibility and a belief that the banks will give you goods to that value. That currency could suddenly have no value. That's possible too. That at the present time, that if you have anything more than, I think, 75,000 in a deposit account, it's not guaranteed by the bank. And in an emergency, the banks may actually decide to invade your savings to save their own neck, which they've done in Cyprus already. I don't know, like, we were always better from day one to have our own currency, to be separate from Europe, to have a punt. And we could vary the value of it up or down to help our exports, get them cheaper, or whatever way we wanted to run it. We never had autonomy when we were connected to sterling anyway, because our pound is based on the value of the pound in London. And I actually remember bringing Irish pounds into an English bank and having deductions of a few pennies taken off it because it was an Irish pound and it wasn't an English pound. Now, if I had one from Ulster, I probably wouldn't have that deduction taken.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, there are people in this country still to this day who believe we should have never left the British. Well, I cannot see why anyone would want to be under the tyranny of a nation that suppressed our way of life and practically exterminated the race, the Irish people. It did it with a vengeance, especially the landlord classes of England, the Tories. And why we would ever want to be part of a rotten system of exploitation, imperialism, I don't know. And I furthermore don't understand is how we lick the arse of the United States. The United States never did anything decent for the people of Ireland. They took what we could give them and they exploited it. And they laughed at us. They called us micks. They gave us the most menial jobs. They locked us up in Staten Island in cages like animals. I have no particular love of the United States. I don't want any particular relationship with the United States. I want a sovereign Ireland, an independent, united Ireland, a nation that knows where it's going, that is confident, that has the ability to design, make, fabricate, survive against all the odds, because we are a great people. And we need to become aware of that greatness that's in us. The spirit of Éireann is in every one of us. It never died. In 1916, to me, and I look at the GPO pillars and I say, thank God we had men to rise against tyranny and say no to your blackguardism, the way you treated our people. It was time for you to get the hell out of Ireland. Believe you me, I look at it with pride any time I pass it. And the greatest pride of all I had was on 2016, passing the GPO and seeing a big banner, Shell to Sea protest. Because I said, we have finally arrived. The men of Northwest Mayo have now made their statement at the GPO. That is gospel.
Good man, Tom.
Made your own statement there once, James. Was it the GPO you made your statement there, or hammered it to the door?
Yeah, I pinned a memorandum to it, all right, yeah. Tom, when you speak of a united Ireland, I desire nothing more, because I know that there was plenty of very good people who desired the same thing, who were manipulated and treated very, very illy. They thought they were working towards that, and what they were being manipulated by outside forces a lot of the time. Do you think we're closer to it now, or when you were a young man?
Well, James, I think we are closer, because with this Brexit, it has really thrown the Ulstermen into a heap. And if we had a government that was functioning properly here in the south, they would be enticed into the country. They would probably opt to join, to have their goods treated the same as ours. And I can see that there's a better prospect now than ever, but I wouldn't be making it a priority. The more important thing at the moment for us is to gain control of our parliament, to be able to have a government that speaks for the people with the authority of the people. Not this dictatorship that we have, because this is a dictatorship. I call it totalitarian. It bloody well is. But when you deny free speech, you really suppress freedom. And I'm looking forward to the day when we get the Crossroads people together. And hopefully, spring is here. Maybe this is the beginning. And let's make Easter, let it be a celebration in Dublin at the GPO. And tell these people to get out. Because they know we're coming for them. They know we're no longer tolerating the rubbish. We're now cheeky enough to speak up, and we'll keep on being cheeky.
Is there any party that you look at that you think has the capacity to do the job, or is it a case that the people will come together when they face hardship?
Well, there's a few people there that are nationalist and independent. I'm not sure about their policies altogether, but they look to me as an okay group if they come together. There's one or two very prominent people in the Dublin area that are reputable and would have no axe to grind other than to unify a national party. And I don't see any problem in supporting them and working with them, and they with us. But the central point is we are a nationalist party, and we are a party that want a cooperative type system, not capitalism. That's the thing that has killed us so far.
Why is there an element at the moment who view themselves as socialist but are very, very quick to not realise that if you have a country and you are sharing its resources, you can't share it with the rest of the world. You have to hold it to share it. Why can't they get their head around that?
But yeah, I'm glad you drew attention to that, because it's a particular point, and it raises questions, all right. There has to be some sense of reason here. The loaf, the national cake, is only so big. If we took in, as I would have thought, we might have taken in maybe 50,000 people. But at the present time, we have 300,000, 400,000 people who are not productive. And land them in on the people that are already struggling without proper housing, without, in fact, children not being adequately nourished, without places in schools for children even. We're running short of spaces. We have an arrogance from some of these guests of the state, you might call them. I can't understand people going out in the street against the ordinary people here and saying refugees are welcome here. We can't take the rejects of the world and carry them. We have to support our own children first. My philosophy, and I told this to the parish priest on one occasion, charity begins at home, Father. You can talk all you want from the pulpit about bringing these people and cherishing them and nourishing them. Nobody mollycoddled us. Charity begins at home.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. My thing, what I desire, I do believe in the right of people to own their property. I believe in that. My desired form of government would be a blend where assets like wind power, gas, oil, things like that are shared amongst the people for the benefit of the people. But from my view, with outright socialism, there is a stifling of the individual right to excel, if you get me.
Yeah, I agree.
I think my thing is a blend, do you know?
Oh, I agree with the halfway house for that, because to own your property is a fundamental, I believe. Anything after that may be negotiable. Yeah, I think a blend would be a good choice in that situation.
You have seen a lot of leaders in your time come and go. And there's been a lot of leaders in the world, the likes of Gaddafi. We must remember what Gaddafi done was. Gaddafi unified the warring tribes of his own country, got rid of the English, got rid of the French, nationalised his oil, brought a standard of living to his country. You'd be old enough to remember that. And then all of a sudden, he was portrayed all around the world as the most demonic, evil man who ever existed. People forgot the good that he'd done.
Yes, James, I agree with you.
What is the power of narrative in time, Tom? Because you were long enough around to see what time does, like.
Not alone do I remember Chavez, but I also remember, and I think it's a great tragedy, the Battle of the Cuba and Havana and Fidel Castro and Che Guevara. Here were revolutionaries. I happened to be in the hotel. I took a trip after I retired. Hotel Sevilla. This was the hotel that Castro and his friends walked into one night. And he told the Americans, "Hey lads, you've overstayed your welcome here. You're blackguard in the country. You got a week to get out of town." And they did. And they are still, to this day, they talk about the bigotry. They still have sanctions on Cuba because Cuba got the upper hand. And to my mind, America, to my mind, is the greatest evil of our time. Because this Gaza genocide, and it is genocide, it's the most horrible thing. And we have, as Irish, the greatest sympathy for those people. But who fueled the fire except Joe Biden from Dundalk or wherever he came from? He's no son of Ireland. The United States stands accused as a mass murderer, and the President of the United States should go before the courts for human justice to be tried for either manslaughter on a mass scale, but genocide would be more definitely the actual charge. It is horrid what they've done. And they continue on now talking about Ukraine. That's the other chapter we've forgotten about that already. We can bury that as if, we have no guilt. America still will rot for what they've done to the Palestinian people. That's all I'm saying.
You're a very interesting man to me, because I know plenty of characters your own age and they do not see any of this at all. And I have to put this to you because you identify and you have empathy for young people. I've met you, I've talked about it. You think it's horrendous that they can't find a home. You think it's horrendous that they, are forced to immigrate when they're highly educated and all the rest of it. Why have so much of the older generations kind of just faded off into the sunset without raising so much as a rebellious call? Why do you think that's happened, Tom?
I'm not sure exactly, but I've never seen age as a barrier to communication. I like talking to young people, and I find young people quite interesting. But I think young people are not getting enough attention in the right ways, and these gadgets that we have, they're not educating; they're destroying. It's what you're doing out there in the field at the moment is an education, proper education. These little second magic boxes, they're never going to grow a spud or do things that are important. They're a tool in the hand of the rich at the moment. And we have to know how to get around and get the upper hand on that too. But the real issue is bread and butter. Food, clothing and housing, the basics of any country. And that's where Ireland should be very happy to look at itself, because we can provide all those things within our shores. But we need to take control. As I said, we have to throw off the shackles. We still have a kind of a slave mentality that we haven't quite got rid of. And we have to take back control and stand up against these people and say, look, who gives you authority? If you don't get the approval of the people, you have no right to do this, that, or the other. And if you're not going to do what the people want, get out, because that's what you're supposed to be doing. You're the servant of the people. We are not your servants.
Do you would have seen it at the foundation of the state? We threw off the shackles of England, so they say, you know. We put on the shackles of the Vatican, in my opinion, after. And then when the Vatican became unattractive, we put on the shackles of the EU. And now in later years, we seem to have put on the shackles of the United States. Why is it that we always seem to think we need a big brother looking out for us?
We were so beaten into nothingness that we needed somebody to look up to, whether it was a church, some king that we devised ourselves, or something or other to look up to. It was just to fill a void that was there in our character. But I think in recent history, if you look at Irish people, they're taking the top positions across the globe. We're talking there this morning. The head of the English banks, the exchequer in London, was a fellow called Carney. Turns out Carney is from County Mayo, believe it or not, at the top job in finance at the Crown, which I think sterling is still one of the strongest currencies in the world, even yet. And to think that an Irishman is capable of running an organisation as big as that operation, it's nearly as big as the Vatican. And that's a big bank. But that just shows you that even at that level, and if you come to looking for designing new equipment and one thing or another, you'll find Irish people at the top of every department doing the best that can be done.
Well, Tom, I want to thank you for coming here today, for meeting all of us here today. And have you a statement or a quote in either in English or Ascielga that you'd like to finish off the episode with?
Well, a very short one, and I've said it before. And I think we finished up in Castlebar a couple of years ago at a public meeting with a fella singing The West Awake. And I'll conclude by saying this: the West can and will win, because that's what we're out to do, and we're only starting.
Thank you, Tom. That's it. Yes.
They're causing inflation in land prices.
Yes. Time in my life in Dublin at a protest, and like when we came down the road, he started telling me about all the things we could do and should do to get the country working as it should. And I was very, very much taken back that the fact that a man of his experience still had fire in his heart, like he was in his teenage years, and that all he cared about was the country and the people in it. And I thought, I'm going to look into you a bit. And I made inquiries, and every story I heard back was better than the last one. I met him another day, and I says, I'm going to make sure of one thing. I'm going to make sure that the people of this country remember who you were. And my uncle used to tell me, to be an Irish hero, you had to be young, good looking and dead. But I've always done things Irish-wise, so I have. So I want to show you something, Tom, here. I hope you like it.
Fine.
Thank
Very
you.
good job. Congratulations. Well done.
Thanks for a lifetime. Fair play to you. So that's that now, and I hope you like it.
The Dutch are feeding so many, certainly this island could feed a lot more.
Yeah.
And I suppose really if anyone's thinking about it, we have the potential, huge potential in the food industry. And it's one of the things they won't do because they have to work at it. They're happier to go with foreign inward investors to bring them in to create jobs because they're too bloody lazy to create the jobs based on our resources. And where the resources are concerned, they give them away. The oil, the gas, the gold and the silver. Hand it over. Our birthright. It belongs to every single one of us here. And then they quietly go off and they privatise. The last dirty deed was Aer Lingus, our pride of the skies, our national airline. Pascal O'Donoghue handed it over to IAG or something, a combination of British Airways and Iberian Airways. A gift from the Irish, and we got nothing. We, the shareholders who built all these companies, they've done the same with the rural post offices, they've done it with the Garda station, they're pulverising the people, they're continuing to squeeze until we get up and fight back. They will absolutely trample us out. There is no regard for human life here. This is a predatory animal on the loose, and we have to tame that animal. And the only way we tame that animal is by the might of a nation, of a people together, unified, because we are the power. And David taught us that, and we forgot it so quickly. The united front of a people together, no government except God Almighty can stop it. That is the power of the people. So be ready to fight. Let us say if we go down fighting, at least we've done our best.
Go on, Tom. Good man, Tom.
And we'll retain our taxes. This is the kind of thinking, economic starvation for them, because we are the pawns in the game, but we have the power at the same time. They only kid us by trying to frighten us. But as long as we stand firm, we will get the upper hand. We need to get out on the streets and not be ashamed to stand up for our rights. But there are too many people hiding and hoping someone else is going to do it for them. I think we'll shake them out of their complacency very soon. It's coming to that point. But I believe we can win. I really do.
Here. I just want to welcome everyone here today. I think it's absolutely so inspiring to see so many women, men and children here, and it gives me great hope for the future. I can see the love of this country resonating through every person that is here today, and I think what we're doing here on James's farm. First of all, I want to thank James and Roisin and all the kids for opening up their home to all of us here to be able to learn skills, share skills and grow as a community, and we can only grow stronger from here. This is our moment in time that we've strategically retreated to gather our skills and get strong as a people. And from today onwards, we're going forward. We've planted our oak trees, our fruit trees, and our vegetables and fruits. And we have the animals here on the farm. And all through the year, there will be different classes to show life skills where everybody can incorporate it in their own homestead, and in turn bring it to their own communities. And it's only a good thing what's happening here today. And again, thanks James for having us here. It's not an easy thing on a working farm to have a whole bunch of people down, interrupting the lambing season and the planting season, but he has selflessly given us an opportunity to develop our skills. And I know from everybody here today that that's what we're going to do, and we're moving forward. And I'm so proud of every one of you for showing up today.
We'll head in. There's stew, sandwiches, tea, coffee. Help yourselves. And Gareth is going to show us how to use these Amish type devices for seeding and that. Thanks to every one of you for turning up. Massive thanks to Patricia and also the other people who helped to get this done. And the artists should be here, there's no doubt about it, but we live in an environment in Ireland where people are genuinely afraid at the moment. That is the truth. They think their business and everything could be hurt by working with the likes of myself and that is scandalous, because we're meant to have a nation of free speech and free expression and all of that, and unfortunately it is difficult at the time. But that all comes back with people being brave, and all of you are very brave for turning up today. All of you are very brave, I see on the groups and that, and keep being brave, that's all I'll say. You know, we have an exemplary man there. He spent an entire lifetime trying to waken people up, and I think the penny is just beginning to drop for a lot of people. But my little bit of advice to all of you today is get seeds in the ground, get stuff that actually means something. I heard a massive quote yesterday, someone said it was from the Indians in America: when you have the last river poisoned, when you have the last tree cut, you'll realise you can't eat money.
Still to come in part 2 of the show.
Man on your own, you know, it's it can be off-putting, whereas if you're looking at this and there's a man in each ridge, you know, all of a sudden it's like not too bad.
I totally get it, because I don't think I could move around the country on my lonesome.
String, fair play to you.